Hi, I'm Xander Skinner. I'm a senior at McKendree University. I'm also on the swim and dive team.
And I'm Shayne Pluto. I'm also a senior here at McKendree, and I play on the men's Division I hockey team. We're going to talk to you today about single sport specialization and how it can affect youth athletes negatively. So we started with 7 peer-reviewed articles, and these are the 2 that we settled on. So the first article here is, When is it too early for single sport specialization? By Brian T. Feely, Julie Agel, Robert F. Laprerty. It was published in 2015 in the American Journal of Sports Medicine.
The second article we decided on is Sports Specialization, Part 1. Does early sports specialization increase negative outcomes and reduce the opportunity for success in young athletes? By Gregory D. Mayer et al. This was also published in 2015 in the Sports Health Journal. What is single sport specialization? So I think Gregory D. Mayer really nailed it with his interpretation. It is an intensive year-round training in a single sport at the exclusion of other sport. They made a 3-list criteria. So it's when the athlete chooses one main sport to focus on. It's also when the athlete participates in this sport for greater than 8 months in a year. And it also when an athlete quits all other sports to focus on this one singular sport.
So the first article, When is it too early for single sport specialization, touches on a multitude of things. So in the United States right now, there's an estimated 27 million youth from the ages of 6 to 18 that are participating in team sports. Over the past 20 years, there's been a shift in emphasis from recreational sport to kids wanting to have fun. All of a sudden there's a skill development, and these parents and coaches are pushing their youth athletes to be the best that they can be and want them to focus on one thing in hopes that they get an opportunity to play collegiate athletics or make it into the NHL, the MLB, NBA, things like that. So this has been caused by things like an emphasis being put on sports accomplishment, financial rewards if an athlete does well, public perception of the value of being elite. Everyone can look up to an elite athlete and say, I want to be like that. And that's a big reason that pushes youth athletes to want to be the best that they can be. However, with this, overuse injuries often occur as a relation to musculoskeletal and physiological immaturity. So what this means is, as a result of muscle, ligaments, and bones not being fully developed, an injury is going to occur with repeated use.
So sports specialization, Part 1. I would say this is more a guide to optimize enjoyment and safety for youth sports, including hourly limits per week, as well as tournament limits per season. United States Tennis Federation added tournament limits per season between the ages of 14 and 18. As you get older, the more tournaments you're allowed to play and the more hours you're allowed to practice per week. Concerns for young athletes regarding overuse injuries, burnout, and dropping out of the sport completely. We want our kids to stay in sports for longer. Shayne touched on where the pressure is coming from. I also think it really comes from the parents, coaches, and other young athletes being seen, almost peer pressured into quitting all other sports to focus on this one singular sport you have the desire to be a professional at. And I also think it's at the psychological burnout contributes largely to young athletes dropping out of sports completely. They just mentally had enough.
So our methodology section for our 2 articles, basically these articles are a meta-analysis, so there's not a definite methodology section. And this is because single sport specialization takes numerous years to affect the body due to repeated use. Like you can't differentiate throughout just a single year or months that these studies are going to take time in order for us to find the factors that affect youth specialization.
And the idea behind sports specialization is becoming professional in the desired sport. So studies in this desired topic span from 3 to 8 years. There are a lot of variables to control in the span of 3 to 8 years. A lot can happen in 3 to 8 years.
So both our articles look at youth between the ages of 6 to 18. So in the first article, Gulich and Emmerich evaluated more than 1,500 German Olympic athletes and found that the elite athletes specialized later and were more likely to have participated in more than one sport over the age of 11. So the longer a youth athlete can stay in a sport, and if he can play multiple sports growing up, the better off he's going to be.
With this meta-analysis, we found that an increased degree of specialization is positively correlated with increased serious overuse injury risk. So the more you practice in a single sport, the higher the chances are you'll get an overuse injury.
So here we have a chart showing the findings of the second article. And so basically, to specialize in a sport, your risk of injury is low if you play multiple sports. However, once you go to playing a sport for year round, the risk of injury starts to ramp up. It's starting to become high. And this is going to negatively impact your youth athlete.
If we look down in the charts, the lowest section is a highly specialized, so 3 out of the 8 following. Year-round training, choose a singular sport and put all other sports to focus on one. We can see the risk of injury is at a high, risk of serious overuse injury is at a high, and the risk of acute injury is pretty low, but that's why your body is conditioned into the sport. I think the reason why we both are so passionate in this topic is because the fact that we both did sports throughout our youth to find that coordination and love for the sport we truly want to focus on.
So yeah, this research is relevant because we've each played, like Xander said, we've each played numerous sports throughout our life. Me personally, I've had minimal injuries as a result to playing multiple sports. And I think this is relevant for coaches, parents to know that for your youth to become elite, they don't necessarily have to play one sport for the entire year. They can play multiple sports, and to just stop putting the pressure on them to become elite. You know, as our body grows and physiologically becomes ready, then maybe that's the time where you push your athlete around the 15, 16, 17 range to try and get them to play a sport for a year round kind of time.